Former world champion Garry Kasparov said, chess is not just about checks and attacks, you have to be creative. And so in this video, I'm going to give you 6 examples from my recent games where I have had ideas. And in 5 of those cases, the ideas have been sound. The engine said it's a top move or an okay move. And in one case, it was a total blunder and I lost. That's life, guys. We've got to roll with the punches. And so one of the differences between beginners and intermediates, I've raised my game from 700-800 chess.com rapid to 1500-1600 odd, is that beginners tend to operate in some kind of extreme. They're either attacking the whole time or they're making a whole bunch of passive moves, when in fact stronger players find testing moves, often putting their opponent under pressure and often forcing them to make a mistake. So with that, let's get our paintbrushes out and study these positions. Okay, so here we go. First example on the screen, timestamps in the description below as usual. And so my opponent has the black pieces. They play this move e4, threatening the knight obviously, and the me of 1 or 2 years ago would just play knight d4. And it's worthwhile saying that if you turn on an engine, knight d4 is absolutely fine, you can play that. However, there is an idea that you can employ in this position where you don't move the knight, where you can just make things a little bit uncomfortable for your opponent. And so you want to pause the video and try and work it out. Well done if you do. The move I played in this position was rook to c1, queen c2 as an alternative, and the threat should be clear, bishop c4. And so my opponent is not paying attention. They play this move, they take the knight, and now we have bishop c4 trapping the queen. We have queen takes c4, rook takes c4, f takes g2, rook g1, and after all is said and done, a queen has been exchanged for 2 minor pieces and a pawn. But if you turn on the engine, white is just completely winning. So sure, in this position, rook c1 isn't winning, okay? Black can defend against this. Example, queen f7, let's say bishop c4, bishop e6, takes, the queen is hanging, we take, and now we move the knight. But notice the difference. Instead of just moving the knight straight away, we're forcing our opponent to think with this move, rook to c1. And often, at these kind of beginner intermediate levels, they are just going to blunder the piece. Okay, so in the second example, sometimes you can put together an idea because you know that your opponent is desperate to remove a threat. And so in this position, I have the white pieces. My bishop on b2 is a monster. It's staring at those dark squares, staring at the g7 square. And I know that my opponent wants to remove it. And so in this position, I play this move knight to e5, which I think is the top engine move, or close to. And in this position, I'm aware, or at least I think, that bishop to f6 is a mistake. And their rationale is that, well, if you take my bishop, I'm going to take your bishop. And so in this position, they do play this move, bishop to f6. It is a mistake. And now you can go ahead and take this bishop. And if they take your bishop, you can go ahead and take the rook. And if they take your rook, we have queen h7, check, winning a pawn. And the king is somewhat misplaced on f8 after a capture. And we're going to capture the bishop here on a1. And so to see that in action, we have knight takes d7, bishop takes b2, knight takes f8 in the game, bishop takes a1, and now queen takes h7 check, king takes f8, and now rook takes a1. And if you look at this position, the knight is somewhat misplaced. You have a protected pass pawn. Surely this is completely winning here for white. There is an alternative idea in this position where you can deliver this check, and now the king moves, and you can play this move d6. And now if they take, we have here rook d1 check, winning the black queen. And so in this position, okay, 95 looks pretty innocuous, but it carries a very simple idea that bishop f6 is asking for trouble. Okay, so in the third example, my opponent again has the black pieces. They play this move bishop g4, pinning the knight, and they have one clear idea. They want to play this move e4. This was an online classical game. And here it's very instinctive to play moves like bishop e2 or h3. However, I thought about this for a while, quite proud of this, and I played this move b4. And now their bishop should really be going back, but instead they just continue with their attack, e4. And now we can take this bishop and the queen is hanging. So you don't have immediate time here to take the knight. And what's beautiful about this variation is that they cannot take this pawn here on c5. This is what I thought about. Because after queen takes c5, we have the resource queen c1. There's no time, queen c2, sorry. There's no time to take the knight because bishop e6 check wins the queen. That's quite pretty. And they realized this. So when their queen was hanging, they just moved it out of the way. But now we have knight to h4, knight to h4. And in this position, it's got that you take my queen, I take your queen feel to it. And here, they move their queen to g5, okay, threatening the knight. We have the resource f3, and after takes, everything is fine. Alternatively, in this position, if they play something like bishop to h3, we can just go to e1 here, protect the knight. We're stopping mate as well. And if you turn on the engine, okay, it's not trivial. White is completely winning. We did win a bishop in the process. So sure, your opponent has an idea, but maybe, just maybe, you have a better one. Okay, so in this fourth example, once again, my opponent has the black pieces. They're somewhat against the rope. Their king is misplaced here on f8. Obviously, the knight can't move. There is checkmate here on f7. However, my opponent has played this annoying move, rook to d8, basically saying, well, if you develop your knight, I'm just going to take this pawn and then this pawn. It turns out that this line is absolutely fine. Queen takes d2, knight e4, queen takes c2. Knight takes f6 puts black under a lot of pressure. However, there is a simpler move here for white, which puts black under a lot of pressure. And once again, I was quite proud that I found this. It is the top engine move. You want to pause the video, try and work it out. It is the move e4. And now, obviously, you can't have knight takes e4 because queen takes f7 is checkmate. However, this is a poison pawn. You can't even play queen takes e4 with the view of a queen exchange and winning a pawn. It doesn't work. You do tactics puzzles the whole time. You realize that there is a remove the defender tactic here. Queen takes e4, bishop takes f6. The queen is now hanging. They realize this, so they took my queen. But we have this free move. Bishop takes e7 check. King takes e7, excuse me. And now rook takes f4. And after all is said and done, we just have the extra piece, and they resigned a few moves later. So once again, e4 in this position is an idea. It doesn't win the game. They can defend. They can just retreat the queen. However, it puts my opponent under a lot of pressure, and queen takes e4, okay, in a rapid game, lower levels, is quite intuitive, but it's a terrible blunder. Okay, so in the fifth example, we've done 4 with the white pieces. Let's do 2 with the black. Here, I make this engine inaccuracy, knight to b4, okay, not the best move here. However, what I'm thinking about here is that my opponent's king is stuck in the center. It cannot castle long now, otherwise this pawn on a2 is a free pawn. And I'm also aware, again, this was a slow game, that c3 is a mistake. Or at least I sense it at the time. Because if they play c3 trying to kick the knight away, we have bishop to a6, forcing the queen to move, and then we're going to have knight to d3 check, winning the bishop outright. And so they indeed play this move c3. We follow up with bishop to a6. c3 was indeed a blunder. And now in this position, they find this resource c4. It'll be annoying, but we have d takes c4, and we still got this threat here of knight d3 check, winning the bishop outright. And in this position, if you're wondering, bishop takes a8 doesn't work because we have this move c3. The queen is hanging, the bishop is hanging. You're going to save your queen. We have c takes b, and the rook moves, and we take the bishop here on a8, and we just up the exchange. And so I believe my opponent calculated this. So instead, in this position, after d takes c4, played b takes c4. But now we just deliver the check anyway. We have knight to d3 check. The king moves. And in this position, I come up with this horrendous move, rook to d8. I don't know why I did that. We have knight takes b2, much simpler. And now bishop takes a8 if they want, and rook takes a8. And we just up the exchange. We're completely winning. So sure, knight to b4 is not the best move in this position. However, it's a little bit annoying for my opponent. And the most natural move in this position, c3, is just a complete blunder. Okay, so in the sixth and final example, showing you an idea that doesn't work. We're human, we make mistakes, that's part of the game. And here, my opponent has the white pieces. They have a rook here on a7. They're threatening to take the bishop on b7. Most natural thing to do, maybe is the best thing to do, is to play rook to b8. Instead, I try to be smart by playing this move rook a8, saying let's exchange rooks. And if you decide to take my bishop, I'm going to play rook a1 check. You're going to block with your bishop. I'm going to play queen h3. And I'm going to checkmate you in the next move. Doesn't work. Because if you do that, we have rook takes b7, rook a1 check, bishop f1, queen h3, threatening mate, but always check for checks in your lines. My opponent finds the correct move. Queen to b2 check, winning the rook. And of course, it is time to hit that resign button. So there you go, guys. Examples to get your creative juices flowing. Whoa, sounds a bit dodgy, doesn't it? Okay, and so in fast time controls, you can obviously hang around, make a whole bunch of moves, try to win on time. However, in slower chess, slow rapid, classical chess, I'm afraid to climb the rating ladder. We're going to have to be creative. We're going to have to put our opponent under pressure. So hopefully that's been insightful. Thank you very much for your time.